Each year here in Iowa, the annual spring play of the water cycle determines whether or not we'll have abundant crops, a poor harvest, or perhaps even a devastating flood. The normal weather pattern should bring bursts of rain and periods of dryness, all in the same season. Sometimes, though, the atmosphere is locked into patterns that don't show much change and persist over periods of weeks and months. When this happens, droughts like that of 1987 through 1989 become all too familiar, and floods like the once-in-500-year catastrophe of 1993 become events we hope to never live through again. So how do droughts and floods develop here in Iowa, here in Johnson County, your own backyard? Droughts often begin in late winter and early spring. The combination of little snow cover in the winter months, dry northwesterly flow in the upper atmosphere in the early spring, and persistent hot high pressure in July make for an unforgiving heat that cripples crops and parches our soils. The typical drought pattern features a large area of hot and dry conditions over the western two-thirds of the country, with the steering currents of the atmosphere, called the jet stream, far to the north of Iowa. This pattern of persistent high pressure west of Iowa displaces most available moisture from the Gulf of Mexico to the southeastern states and to the Pacific Northwest, leaving Iowa hot and dry. On the other hand, flooding patterns can develop by having a very snowy winter combined with a mild, wet spring. Severe flooding usually happens when the spring and summer months also feature frequent thunderstorms with heavy rains. The pattern which produced the Great Flood of 1993 looks similar to this one. A large area of cool air was much farther south than normal during the spring and summer months of 1993. The jet stream, located over the Midwest, continued to provide enough energy to produce numerous periods of thunderstorms. As a series of low-pressure areas moved through the region, persistent moisture moving north from the Gulf of Mexico inundated the Midwest with record rainfall and record flooding for a 3-month period. Here's a look back at some of the incredible scenes from the worst flood in 500 years, the Great Flood of 1993.
The National Weather Service says Blackhawk Creek has already reached its crest and is expected to slowly fall over the next several days. The Cedar River at Waterloo, meanwhile, will continue to rise at least until Wednesday. But forecasters say there's really nothing to worry about.
What do you think about all this?
Terrible. Well, it's as much devastation as I'd ever want to see in one place, I know that. I think it's really terrible.
This is so remarkable. I've never experienced anything like it. It's incredible. Actually, it's real scary.
Several miles downstream, the waters rage through downtown Waterloo, carrying debris and rising to the bottom of the railroad bridge just south of downtown. The rising waters brought out onlookers by the hundreds trying to get a look at the flood of the century. This is where it all began. Heavy storm clouds about to pummel Iowa County. Within about an hour, this area received more than 3 inches of rain, filling drainage ditches and making a mess in the southern Iowa County town of Millersburg, where the floodwaters caught many people by surprise. The story is much the same here in Marengo, except here the streets are flooded and more than a dozen vehicles have ended up much like this one, stuck in the middle of the street. That wasn't very difficult. One of the city's main roads, Eastern Avenue, was filled with up to 2 feet of flash flood water. Eastern Avenue is already used as a detour while the city builds new storm sewers on the west side of town. But today that detour was more like a river. With the heaviest rains over, street flooding in Marengo and other parts of Iowa County will eventually subside. But the big question remains: can area's streams and rivers cope with this recent test of Mother Nature?
These are the sounds that farmers have been waiting to hear. Sounds of progress now that Mother Nature has given them a break in the rain.
The fields are still plenty soggy in spots, but progress is coming along real well.
These farmers hope their recent progress will bring real blessings next fall, but they know they'll be battling an uncertain market and an even more uncertain Mother Nature.
The peaceful morning didn't last very long in Blairstown this morning. Thick, dark clouds moved in a few hours after daybreak, and soon after, the rumbling began. Residents here in Blairstown say this is one of the darkest storms they've ever seen. Here we are in downtown Blairstown in the middle of the thunderstorm, and it looks like it's 10 o'clock at night, but it's really only 10 o'clock in the morning. The heaviest downpour lasted only about 20 minutes, but it was enough to quickly fill the streets with rainwaters. Street flooding aside, there were no reports of damage here, just a few wet citizens and a few frazzled nerves.
Ground's still wet. Corn looks good, got a good color, but it's down here and it should be up here.
Normally, this corn would be waist high by now, but Nola's the first to admit this isn't a normal year.
The lake level is within 1.5 feet of going over the spillway. This is where all this extra rainfall can be seen in its most dramatic fashion, the outflow of the dam at Coralville Lake, which is currently running at about 8,200 cubic feet per second. But despite all the extra outflow here, officials say it is still too early to tell what impact any extra rain would have on the levels here.
A small isolated thunderstorm with 3 inches of rain is not nearly as big a problem as a half inch over a widespread area.
At North Liberty's Mid-River Marina, most of their boat ramps are out of service. The high water is keeping away boaters who would normally be flooding the waters.
It's about the only use for tractors for many farmers along the Iowa River. The fields are flooded and farmsteads sit like islands, making this the only way to get supplies to and from home. Larry Byer hasn't planted 1 acre of corn on his farm. It's been raining that much since March. The fields never dried out. The rivers swallowed up thousands of acres in Iowa County. Other crops are stunted from too much rain and a lack of sunshine. 20,000 acres may be completely lost.
Jimmy Ma owns the China Garden restaurant in Coralville. Today, he's been doing what he can to save it, including wading to a swamped manhole in chest-high water. Ma is just one of the dozens of Johnson County residents and business owners hurt by the flooding. Now comes word that help is on the way. Access to First Avenue in Coralville is still cut off, and while officials still don't have a good estimate of how much public damage there is, some small business owners now know exactly what they lost. And now that the disaster declaration is official, many will now qualify for federal aid. While the county still pumps water out of flooded areas, the rains continue, a nightmare for emergency management officials. But through it all, some business owners have kept their sense of humor. A few laughs to ease tension where little relief is expected.
Like the Coralville Reservoir, Iowa City may also be heading into uncharted territory. As the Iowa River rises, the fight to protect the city's water supply intensifies. Tonight will be a critical one as they keep a close watch on the river.
The outflow from the emergency spillway here at Coralville Lake is causing a tremendous amount of damage. Here at the Tailwater East Campground, the water has eroded away the bank of several of the campsites. It has uprooted many of the trees here, and now this fence post is just a few inches away from falling into the river. Shutting down the outflow has also given park managers a chance to see some of the flood damage at the reservoir. Much of the parking lot for the Tailwater West Campground is eroded away. Along the Coralville Strip, businesses already battered by the earlier floods lost ground again. Meanwhile, the pumps are pumping out floodwaters from this area for the 4th time this summer.
This is what the top of the spillway is supposed to look like. Dry. Sure, the water here is still pretty high, but nothing compared to this. For nearly a month, water poured over the spillway. Now it has subsided to reveal this. Destruction so awesome, the Army Corps of Engineers is giving guided tours.
Visitors to the Coralville Reservoir are finding a new amazement: fossils everywhere. When the water from the spillway tore through what was the Lower Cottonwood Campground, it exposed the rock bed from 375 million years ago. The fossils are everywhere underfoot. From crinoids to brachiopods to fossils that are really unpronounceable, most people here say they're amazed.
Look like prehistoric worms over there. It's pretty neat.
Corps officials say they don't quite know what to do with this area. The exposed fossils are drawing several thousand people every weekend, but for how long depends on Mother Nature.
And after in Coralville. That was then. This is now. Many business owners are confident the water is gone for good. On July 6th, flooding also put the brakes on thousands of motorists. The water got this high before the Department of Transportation closed I-380. Look how far it's dropped since then.
The storm literally tore this auto dealership's roof to pieces. Luckily, most of the damage was confined to property and trees. There have been few reports of serious injuries in Cedar Rapids. Amazing considering the strength of this storm. When it blew in shortly after 5 o'clock, sheets of rain turned streets into rivers. So far, there's no word on how long it will take to get power back to many neighborhoods.
Last night's rainfall was not an extreme amount, but the high winds knocked power out to an estimated 20,000 Cedar Rapids households. The worst part, say some of these residents, is that fallen trees have knocked out power to the sump pumps that keep basements dry here. Damage estimates from just this storm alone could top $1 million. Between torrential rains and rampaging rivers, it's been an unbelievable year. Many fields are still underwater, so it's tough to measure all the damage. But experts now say cash flow on the farm could be off by more than $1.5 billion. That's a third of all farm income. Rising feed costs are also going to add almost $175 million to the cost of raising hogs in Iowa. And because of the flooding, farmers will spend $140 million fewer dollars in rural communities. That's especially tough in places like Tama and Chelsea, where river flooding has already caused major damage.
We'll survive it. I mean, we've had troubles, but not as bad as some.
Yeah.
So you can look at that and say we're lucky.